Buenos dias. That's the only Spanish I know, so everything from here is English. Patricio, thank you again for giving me the opportunity to come and speak and share our story. Let me tell you, before I get into the presentation, let me tell you who I am not. I do not have a PhD. I don't have a doctor next to my name. I'm not a researcher, nor am I from the government entities. I am here simply as an entrepreneur. And entrepreneur, to me, does only one thing, and that is solve problems, get paid well, hopefully, sometimes not, and then use that profit to get more customers. That's the only thing entrepreneurs are supposed to do. Sometimes we're successful, and sometimes we're not. So I will tell you a story of today of our attempts to be an entrepreneurial company. So where did this all begin? Okay. So 1991, I was an instructor on this aircraft, and the interesting point here is that in 1991, it was the first time that we were able to work as a team, from people on the ground, people up in the air, people in Washington, D.C., the generals. Everybody was able to, for the first time, use near real-time information to make decisions together. And now, rather than this aircraft, we have drones. But it's very similar. You take sensor information, transmit it through satellite communications, send it to field units, whether that's a soldier, the generals here, the analysts are here. Whatever the battlefield requires, everybody is using the same information collected from this aircraft. It just happens to have no people in it. And this principle of digitizing the battlefield, sharing the information so you can work as a team, I think will also occur in agriculture. So whenever I struggle to see how agriculture is going to evolve, I go back to this experience, and it helps me gain some context. So you'll see a little bit of this play out in the presentation. So naturally, we have quite a bit of aerial experience, from satellites to manned aircraft to drones or unmanned systems, whether they are large drones, whether they are helicopters or a manned aircraft. We've got quite a bit of experience with aerial assets. But for agriculture, it's not enough. And many years ago, I used to think this was enough to digitize agriculture. But we have found out through very costly mistakes that I made that this is not enough. You must do something more. So we have evolved for the past several years. We're going on our 5th year now. And this notion of not just aerial, but use whatever assets, whether satellite, manned aircraft, drones, ground sensors, helicopters, ground robots, if you can make all of those connect together and solve some specific problems that our customers have, wonderful things starts to happen. You get paid, you get revenue, you get profit. So 2 specific problems that I'll talk about a little bit are the problem of labor scarcity in agriculture, specifically the tree and vine fruits. I understand in PIURA, or the surrounding area, there's a lot of table grapes. So hopefully some of this thing perhaps may be applicable this area as well. And I'll spend a little bit about time on how do we solve this lack of time in agriculture. Again, this is trying to solve labor scarcity in agriculture and labor time in agriculture by a small company. So you go, how's he going to do that? So bear with me, entertain me, and I'll at least share our thoughts on how we are going to do that. go on. So, pretty pictures. This is now sitting in a drawer or in a big box in our research and development office. We no longer use that asset, but we have quite a bit of experience. We have quite a bit of experience with this platform too, and I'll talk about that a little later, about trying to solve another small problem that some of our cherry growers have in the United States. Okay, so here's one problem that we wanted to solve. Let me go back. So you notice this is a RMAX helicopter, a robotic crop sprayer. It's about 100 kilograms in weight, and it sprays chemicals. It's a sprayer. And this was, of course, designed for Japan. In the United States, we're a little bigger than Japan. Digital Harvest is a business partner to Yamaha, and our job is to find new markets for the Pacific Northwest of the United States, and that is Washington State and the state of Oregon. And we wanted to do something different than spraying, because, again, Yamaha knows how to do this very, very well. We wanted to do something different, and we wanted to solve a different problem. And that problem is cherry fruit cracking. So today, in the United States, the way you prevent cherries cracking, and it cracks because when it rains, the rain collects in the stem bowl, and the stem bowl holds water, and the water gets absorbed into the cherry. And when it does, it swells, and when it swells, it cracks. And it looks like that. And you cannot sell this in the fresh market. So they have several methods. They do some cover, ground cover. Sometimes they'll use a sprayer and just spray air to shake the tree, to hopefully shake the water off. Sometimes they will hire a manned helicopter and use the rotor downwash to shake the cherry tree to shake the water off. This is what they do today. And for the helicopters, manned helicopters, the grower pays $20,000 a month for one helicopter to stand by in an orchard. No flying. Just that one helicopter for a month is dedicated to fly his cherry orchard. So when it does rain, the helicopter can go fly and shake the water. And then, of course, there is a flight time charge every time the pilot has to fly the aircraft. So it's quite expensive, but the cherry is a very expensive fruit. So they're willing to do this and still make a profit. And this is the probably the most effective method with a manned helicopter. So we looked at, can we do something with a robotic helicopter and use it slightly in a different way than a manned helicopter? So the problem with a manned helicopter, I think I can, there's a photo coming up. As you can see, the manned helicopter is quite close to the top of the cherry tree. Because he's a manned helicopter, as somebody who used to fly, my concern is not the cherry, my concern is my safety. So I am going to fly that helicopter so that I can be safe. My forward speed, my height is all going to be safety focused, not cherry focused. And when you do that, the cherry gets too much force, so it bruises the cherry. And so when you bruise the cherry, you still can't sell it, right? And so, let me see if I can go back. So in Washington State, our cherry trees usually look like this. They're a vertical wall. They're not round trees. They're a vertical wall or a V wall. And so this is the test that we did. And we compared the three methods. Let's start on the right. The manned helicopter flies at 4.5 meters per second, and it can cover almost 8 hectares per hour. And you can see the numbers for the ground sprayer here, much, much slower. And you can see the numbers here for the helicopter. But how do we solve the bruising problem? Anybody guess? Yeah, so there's some gesticulations in the back. So a helicopter that is robotic, we can control a few things. We can control the amount of water we carry in the tank. And we can vary that amount of water because that changes the amount of force that's coming from the rotor. So we can change the amount of volume in the water tank, we can change the height above the canopy, and we can certainly change the forward velocity. So when we can control those three parameters, weight, forward velocity, and height, now we can be much, much more precise with this robotic helicopter that a manned helicopter cannot. But there's something else that a manned helicopter cannot do that an unmanned robotic helicopter can do, and that is fly at night. The manned helicopter cannot fly at night, so the grower, the owner of the cherry orchard, is very, very stressed, anxious through the night because he knows his cherries are getting damaged. So soon as daylight, and if you're a pilot, daylight is defined as 30 minutes before sunrise. So 30 minutes before sunrise, you want to go fly. So when the manned helicopter can fly during the day, that's not where we want to compete. What we want to compete is flying at night, that a manned helicopter cannot do. And the cherry orchards are not flat. They have dips, they're on an incline. These are pretty difficult terrain, even during the daytime when it's foggy, slightly rain, that a manned helicopter has problems with. And all these things to a robotic helicopter does not matter. This is how we're going to solve a little bit of the lack of time in agriculture for this application. And now the robotic helicopter works together with a manned helicopter, particularly at night. So let me switch topics a little bit and talk about labor scarcity. Lack of labor in the United States is the biggest problem in tree and vine fruits. And the tree fruits, like apples, their cost from labor is about 65 to 70%. Pinot Noir grapes, where Ken Wright grows his grapes, the Pinot Noir, when you grow that, the cost from labor is over 90%. Because it requires it's quite delicate grape, as some of you may know. So I've known Ken for several years, and he and I were having dinner one night, and this was in the winter time, and he was quite not happy. He was sullen, melancholy. And when we got to talking, he shared with me a little bit more in depth this notion of not having enough labor to work on his vineyards for the upcoming season. And he didn't have a good solution. And for whatever reason, I don't know, when I went to bed that night, I just thought about this problem. Anyway, so this is how a small company is attempting to solve the labor scarcity problem. Before I get to that, let me mention, one more time, good. So this is one of the orchard workers that works on Ken's vineyards. He is in his late 50s or early 60s, very experienced, but as he ages, his productivity goes down. And no young people are coming into the labor force for agriculture. And this is a very manual task. He has to be bent over. As you can see, he has this harness around his neck. And this is about 15 kilograms when he's done. So he has to carry the 15 kilograms, sometimes up a hill, down a hill, dump it over, come back to where he left off, and do it again for 8 hours or 10 hours. And this is why very few people want to do this. And so I was reading a newspaper the very next day, and this image came up. And I did a little bit of telemedicine project when I was in a different company, but this caught me. So notice, this is a surgical machine. So the patient is lying on an operating table in a different room, and the surgeon looks through this device and through his hands moves these articulation arms. And this machine is connected to the operating table through a wire. So I said, can that wire be wireless? And if it's wireless, the surgeon can be anywhere, as long as you have good connection. But notice, this is not a smart robot. This is a dumb robot. And it's made smart because you have a skilled human making a dumb robot smart. So, can this concept work for agriculture? So we call this remotely operated vehicle robot. I came up with that. So we're a small company. We don't have a marketing budget, so this is the best I can do. But as an engineer, you don't get into how good it sounds. You get into how specific it is. So it's a remotely operated. So the remote operation can be anywhere. So the person has a VR headset. The ground robot is somewhere. And they could be operating a vineyard. Interesting concept. This is being funded by Digital Harvest and Digital Harvest only. So I wanted to know, is this even possible? Is this even practical? So we created a concept demonstrator for me to know what I don't know, right? So when I presented this concept, and my relationship with Yamaha goes back many, many years, and I showed them this drawing, and they said, we like to be a partner to you. So Yamaha contributed their 5-passenger golf cart as our base robotic vehicle, which means as a small company, I don't have to build a ground robot platform. I can just use this. It's proven. It's mature. It's very, very reliable. And my relationship with Yamaha, again, goes back many, many years. So I have access to their engineers in Japan. Another way of lowering costs as a small company, right? So, oops, sorry. So I have a few of my engineers in Washington. One of them right now is in Peru at a different place. He's spending a week there. But him and his team can control our rover from Washington, D.C. up to our research and development office in Pendleton, Oregon. And it's about 3,480 kilometers away. And the delay is about 0.2 seconds. It's okay for a concept demonstrator, not okay for a real system. But we didn't want to work on the latency. We just wanted to know, is this even possible? So this was done in January 2017, and I have about a 6-minute video that will explain what we're doing and where we are. So please entertain this video. Okay, can we start that? You don't need to hear me talking, so if you can raise the volume when the other people are talking, that'll be good.
The thing I learned from Ken, I recall a particular conversation when he said, you know, when you get a group of 12, 15 growers and you ask them what their second most important problem is, he said, you know, you can get different answers. But when you ask them what is their number one problem, out of those 12 or 15 people gathered, all will have the same answer, and that is labor scarcity.
There have been, in the last 5 years, increasing points in time where we have not had the labor we need. And it's just not acceptable. It can't be. We need another way of harvesting fruit, and clearly manpower is not happening. There is no labor force other than the Mexican laborers who will do this harvest. In the past, when I could have easily amassed a force to harvest a vineyard of any size, be it 20 or 100 people, now I can't. But we have to turn to technology. very hopeful that this experiment that young Kim is involved in will be fruitful, and that it will in fact be something that will have utility to us, going forward. We really need to have the ability to harvest fruit at the right time. Today was wonderful for me to be able to put on the virtual reality equipment and to actually operate the device remotely. Was very cool. I was very surprised by how sensitive it was to my movement. It really copied my movement very, very clearly and closely.
It's a really easy task, but you know what it does to the human body? It takes you from here down to here every 20 feet.
So I'm looking at this right now, or I have a thing on my head. You'll have a thing on your head. So
Look at that, feel my body moving, trying to get me there.
Enable us to increase the speed of the articulation, because we would know he actually reached out this way.
Any time that we can mechanize a procedure, a task, it's huge for us. Just huge for us.
Field worker for a vineyard is in their late 50s. They have to be bent over in weather like this, whether it's rainy and cold and windy, with shears in their hands, and they're out there for hours at a time. It's not a job many people enjoy doing, and that's one of the problems of labor scarcity. Not many people want to do such unpleasant physical tasks for hours on end. What Yamilis allows us to do is now empower others who would not want to do those type of physical tasks, be in a controlled environment like in an office, simply have a control paddle in their hands and manipulate the robotic arm from wherever they may be. It could be within that local town, it could be a mile down the road, or it could be on the other side of the world. Simply the ability to have the hand-eye coordination to control the paddle. If that is the premise, now you can start opening up that labor pool to others, like something that's close to my heart, the Wounded Warriors.
So I'm a veteran, almost 10 years in the Marine Corps, and we have students that are veterans. And this is a population that is ready, willing, able to enter the workforce. They have skills, they have desire. And in this day and age, we have individuals who have mental, physical disabilities, not just veterans, but certainly including veterans. And so a system like this that can allow people to be active participants in agriculture, this is going to allow us to service a whole new sector of our population.
And those folks could be employed at night, even during the day. They can be working for a couple of hours or several hours. So it really starts to expand the labor pool and removes the geography limitation of they must be in that vineyard.
Okay, well, thank you for watching that video. I get very uncomfortable watching myself talk on the video. So let me go to the next slide, if I can. I am pretty realistic. A parent has a hard time calling their child ugly. This is one of my child, and I have no problem calling this ugly. Because I just want to solve a problem. And if the labor scarcity problem can be solved better in other ways, I'm okay with that. At least we attempted to solve a big problem using whatever resources and constraints we had. So I'm pretty realistic that people from Stanford, from MIT, Carnegie Mellon, Georgia Tech, and those smart engineers are teamed with great business people, and some of them have a lot of investors throwing money at them. So those folks want to create a smart robot. And we want to create a dumb robot. So we shall see who wins that race. Perhaps both sides will win, but I don't know. So my only point is I'm realistic. What I am up against, you see some of the functionality on the video. It's very slow. I know all of the things of how ugly this child is. But the purpose was to see, can we even do this? So it was not efficiency we were thinking about. We were really thinking about the effectiveness. Can we be effective doing this and solve the labor scarcity problem? So we shall see. And I show this slide because, again, competing with very, very well-financed teams, this is sort of like a David and Goliath kind of thing to me. And so one of the things that separates us is we want a platform that can do many, many tasks throughout the season. All the teams I know that are competing with us have one singular function. They're focusing on pruning or they're focusing on harvesting. But for it to truly be a realistic, practical to a grower, it needs to do many, many things, just like your tractor does today. You buy one tractor and you change attachments and you can go from spraying to mowing, right? So we have this same thought, and this is the trajectory that we are testing Rover today. So how are we different? We're different because we are building a dumb robot, but put the person in it and it becomes smart. That's our unique perspective. It needs to be multifunctional throughout the season. And at the end of the day, our customers are farmers, vineyard owners. It needs to be simple, rugged, and low cost. As simple as that may sound, you're amazed, I'm amazed how technologists do not pay attention to those things when they're trying to deliver a solution to the farming community. Okay, so here's the end goal. This is what Ken Wright told me that he desires to do. He wants to harvest, for example, when the fruit is ripe, not when he has labor. Today, he harvests or he prunes, he thins when he has labor, not when the vineyard needs it. And so with this system, or a system like this, we have an opportunity to, again, go back to the way it was, to be able to know the optimum time of harvest of that grape. And high-end wine is based on quality. Higher quality, the higher price per bottle it is. So they want to be able to harvest at optimum ripeness, and they want this to be done at night so that when the team at the grape crush pad arrives at 7 a.m., the grape that's harvested is sitting on the crush pad ready to be processed into wine. That's the vision that we're going to drive Rover towards. Okay? And so particularly at night, the question is, where do you go test this in a real orchard or a real vineyard? That is not a research vineyard, that is not sort of flat, but real challenging environment. And so if we're going to truly think about digitizing agriculture, we need an environment that's real where we can do testing. So where can we test this technology? 2 years ago, we wrote a paper and a proposal to the government, the state government of Oregon, and saying, hey, we want to set up a realistic agriculture technology testing where it's a real farm, whether it's dry land farming, whether it's tree fruits, vine fruits, whatever, but we want to bring in all this technology, and then you can now test it. So we provide our satellite data, we provide our manned aircraft data, sound familiar? Drone data, spraying data, ground sensors, and so forth. And we do that out of this office, our research and development office in Pendleton, Oregon. And the airspace from there, from Pendleton Airport, is 36,000 square kilometers of airspace. So if you're a drone manufacturer, if you are a training person, if you have ground robotic equipment, if you have sensors, whatever that may be, you come to Future Farm and you can test this environment. And Digital Harvest is the technology provider for Future Farm. And so one of the people that followed us to Future Farm is Yamaha. And this helicopter I showed you earlier is manual control. For us to do the cherry drying, it must be fully automated. So they're now developing the autopilot for that helicopter next door to our office at Future Farm. And the next video is the last slide I have, I believe, shows you the capabilities of this kind of platform once it's fully autonomous, once it's a robotic platform, okay? So next video coming up back there? Great. This is short. So I mentioned earlier that we want to solve try to solve this lack of time in agriculture. So the next thing that we're going to do is to be able to fly that kind of platform entirely at night. And so when we can do that, the robotics allows us to use nighttime as a productive time in agriculture. And that's how we're going to give you more time. One more? Okay. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Jan Kim. Tenemos tiempo para un par de preguntas. Allá al fondo, doctor Ortega. Señorita, voy yo. Ah, ok. Ya.
Ya. Yo quiero saber cuánto es, perdón,
I can translate for you if needed.
cuánto es el costo del, how much is the cost of the helicopter, cuánto es el costo del helicóptero, cuánto peso puede levantar, how much weight can carry on, and la tercera pregunta es the time, how long the helicopter fly. Thank you.
So, in the United States, if you were to buy this platform today, if you can buy it, if Yamaha will sell it to you, they will not. It will be on a lease, by the way. But right now, it'll cost about $120,000. And so the aircraft, when it's full with volume of chemicals, it weighs about 100 kilograms. Empty, it weighs 70 kilograms. So the lifting capacity is 30 kilograms today. The research and development of this helicopter moved next door to our office. So there is another helicopter that will replace the RMAX. It's called the Phaser. And so it will lift 50% more. So it will lift maybe 45 kilograms. And that's being tested right now in Oregon at Future Farm. Does that answer all your questions? Yeah. The endurance. And so it's an aircraft, right? So you can trade weight with fuel. So the typical operation is you have full volume of the tanks. It'll go out for about 5 or 10 minutes and it'll come right back. So normally you use two. One's out flying, one's standing by. This takes off, the second one comes in. And Yamaha did very good engineering such that when the helicopter lands, unlike other helicopters, the rotor spin has a braking system. So you minimize the ground time. So it stops very quickly, safely, and so you can get the second aircraft up. So it's a constant rotation. Now, when we use the RMAX not as a sprayer, but as a sensing platform, we put sensors, camera systems on there, we can fly 1.5 to 2 hours, easy. But Yamaha doesn't like other people flying it as a sensing platform. They only allow very few people to do that. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
¿Más preguntas? ¿Más preguntas? Yo tengo una. I'll self-translate then. ¿Cuándo vamos a tener un Jam Hillis más avanzado? ¿Cuáles son las etapas del robot? What are the next steps in the Jam Hillis development?
So Future Farm Expo, a conference, will occur at Future Farm on the 15th of August. So at the conference, we will show Rover doing 3 things. Lifting a wire, lowering the wire, because for Pinot Noir, that takes labor. The ability to stuff the trellis or the vine back into the trellis. So we call that stuffing the shoot, pushing the branches back onto the trellis. That's the second function. And the third function is thinning. So that's what it's being tested this season. We're collecting data now how fast is it doing or how slow is it? And then the data should say how fast should it do these functions. So at the end of this season in the US, which is October, our engineers are going to get together, and now we're going to design what you saw was a concept demonstrator. They're going to design a prototype where now efficiency starts to matter, economics starts to matter. So in 2018, we're going to develop a prototype, and in 2018 season, we're going to deploy it again back in at Echo Vineyard at Future Farm, and then get data. So our hope is by 2019, we will have limited commercial operations. That's the goal. And one of the benefits of me coming down to Latin America is we hope we can test the rover all throughout the season, 6 months in North America and 6 months in South America, so we get 2 full cycles a year. Hopefully that will accelerate development timeframe.